Coming up on this edition of Maximus Aviation News Week in Review. After a year of flirting with Airbus and hinting that they may stray, it looks like Southwest will indeed return to its first love after all and remain an all-Boeing fleet. Also, find out if David Neeleman's new JetBlue offshoot airline Breeze Airways will get the U.S. Department of Transportation's approval to finally take to the skies after a year-long pandemic launch delay. I'll tell you which one of Boeing's biggest customers absolutely shredded the airline in a no-holds-barred interview where they warned Boeing to get their act together or risk losing their business altogether. Also, we'll find out if the United States and the European Union can put aside their differences long enough to finally end a 15-year-long tariff-turf battle. Then I'll tell you how there may finally be a light at the end of the tunnel, as word comes that airline industry employment in January rose to its highest level since April of 2020, a sign that demand for air travel may be returning following a year-long record decline due to the global pandemic. And speaking of good news, Boeing is reporting that their latest orders and deliveries data showed that it managed to achieve its first net positive orders since November of 2019. And finally, the knucklehead eco-terrorists at Greenpeace seem to have taken up a new profession as really crappy airplane painters. All that and more is next on Maximus Aviation News Week in Review. Well, Boeing is closing in on a multi-billion-dollar deal to sell dozens of its smallest MAX jet, the 737 MAX 7, to Southwest Airlines in potentially the company's largest 737 MAX order since the aircraft's safety ban was lifted. If confirmed, the deal would finally quash the very public rumors that Southwest was looking to switch from the Boeing 737 to the Airbus A220. And that means Boeing will retain Southwest as one of its largest customers and provide Boeing some much-needed support after the nearly 2-year grounding of the 737 MAX fleet. According to Reuters, the order would include dozens of firm orders and potentially significant options. However, of course, when asked, Southwest said it does not comment on fleet decisions and has nothing to announce. Boeing also declined comment. Each 737 MAX 7 has a list price of roughly $100 million. However, according to aircraft industry sources, the jets usually sell for less than half their official value with typical market discounts. The exact terms of any deal and the timing of a possible announcement are not immediately clear. Speaking at an Aero Club of Washington virtual luncheon this week, Southwest Chief Executive Gary Kelly said, Southwest remained in negotiations with Boeing and reiterated the advantages of having a single fleet type while acknowledging that the A220 is a great plane. Recently featured here on Maximus Aviation, David Neeleman, airline magnate of such ventures as JetBlue and Azul, got the United States Department of Transportation's approval this week on his latest airline venture, Breeze Airways, to launch operations with up to 22 large aircraft. As we told you here on Maximus, the Salt Lake City-based company has already taken delivery of its first 15 Embraer E190s leased from Nordic Aviation Capital and a pair of E195s subleased from another Neeleman establishment airline, Brazil's Azul. A revised agreement with Airbus called for the first delivery of an order for 60 Airbus A220-300s to be delivered this August. Originally planning to launch service to mid-sized city pairs in late 2020, Breeze delayed the launch until mid-2021 due to ongoing COVID considerations. AIN Online is reporting that the airline expects its initial scheduled operations to connect the Atlantic coast, the southern U.S., Texas, and the Midwest. Plans also call for Breeze to begin flying an A220 transcontinental flight from the Atlantic coast to California in October of this year. Breeze marks the fifth airline startup for Neeleman, perhaps best known for founding New York-based carrier JetBlue in 1998. Emirates' Tim Clark, president of one of Boeing's most valued customers, is worried about Boeing. In an exclusive, damning, no-holds-barred interview with the Air Current this week, the longtime president of Emirates Airline offered a surgical dissection of Boeing and its acute problems with the 737 MAX, the 777X, and the 787 Dreamliner, which he believes are, quote, existential and systematic, but solvable. Clark said the responsibility for Boeing's culture, strategy, direction, and priority rests with Boeing's board of directors and no one else. And that is precisely where the buck should stop. And this is where they need to get organized. So going forward, the relationship between airlines and Boeing will depend on what they see they're doing to fix their internal problems. The public reprimand is the sharpest rebuke Boeing has received from any customer in the wake of its almost decade-long internal crisis. Clark has been managing the largest jetliner programs with Boeing and Airbus products for decades, and he is one of the industry's most influential figures. He believes Boeing has a way to go in rebuilding trust and confidence with regulators, customers, and the traveling public. I regret having to say all this, Clark emphasized, but I think it has to be said. Otherwise, we're just moving on from the MAX era as if nothing had ever happened. Clark stressed that Boeing's management can take his criticism any way they like. If they don't like what they hear, then it's difficult. Sometimes it takes someone like me who says you have to fix yourself. In a monumental shift in policy, the European Union and the United States agreed to temporarily suspend all tariffs related to the Airbus versus Boeing tariff war, paving a way to solve the conflict. The two sides have agreed to pause tariffs on various imported products from the respective markets for 4 months, allowing both sides to focus on resolving this long-running dispute. The WTO allowed the U.S. to impose tariffs on goods from the EU worth up to $7.5 billion in October of 2019, while the EU retaliated with its own set of tariffs on imports from the U.S. worth up to $4 billion in October of 2020. While the European side of the conflict sought an agreement to avoid its retaliatory measures, the U.S. at the time was not ready to accept a negotiated settlement, which included an immediate removal of tariffs on EU goods. Thus, the European side went forward with the retaliation measures in November of 2020. The suspension in tariffs is a significant step forward, European Executive Vice President and Trade Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis said. It marks a reset in our relationship with our biggest and economically most important partner, he added, emphasizing that amidst the current pandemic, this is a win-win for both sides. This suspension will help restore confidence and trust, and therefore give us space to come to a comprehensive and long-lasting negotiated solution, he concluded. Flight Global is reporting this week that the U.S. Department of Transportation says airline industry employment in January rose to its highest level since April of 2020. A sign that demand for air travel may be returning following a year-long decline due to the global pandemic. The Department of Transportation says that on March 9th, U.S. airlines employed 713,949 workers as of the middle of January. Of that figure, 596,000 were full-time and 118,078 were part-time employees. That's 19,300 more than the same time a month prior, but still 41,000 fewer than in March 2020, when aviation employment was around 755,000 and the coronavirus began to spread around the world, leading to lockdowns and a sharp decline in passenger demand. Meanwhile, the TSA, the government agency that carries out security screenings at about 450 airports across the U.S., said that customer traffic is slowly returning and on some days recently reached over 50% of pre-COVID levels. The TSA's highest screening number since the beginning of 2021 was on January 3rd of this year, the day many Americans traveled home from their Christmas and New Year's holidays. TSA said 1.33 million people passed through its checkpoints on that day. In more good news for Boeing, Aerotime Hub Online is reporting that Boeing began March 2021 on a positive note, as the company's latest orders and deliveries data showed that it managed to achieve its first net positive orders since November of 2019. In total, Boeing booked 82 aircraft orders in February of 2021. Singapore Airlines booked 11 777X aircraft as it switched up its order book from the 787 to the newest iteration of the 777X. while United Airlines ordered 25 Boeing 737 MAX jets. Also, 14 737 MAXes, 1 747-8, and 4 787 Dreamliner aircraft were assigned to unidentified customers, while the United States Air Force signed up for 27 KC-46 refueling jets, which is based on the Boeing 767 aircraft frame. Following cancellations and contractual changes, Boeing's net orders for 2021 year-to-date is 34 aircraft, the first time that Boeing was able to report net positive orders since November of 2019. In terms of deliveries, Boeing handed off 22 aircraft to customers, 18 Boeing 737 MAX, 1 767 freighter, and 1 777-300ER aircraft. 2 military aircraft, a P-8 Poseidon and 1 KC-46 tanker, were delivered to the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Air Force respectively. However, Boeing still has not handed over a single Boeing 787 Dreamliner since October of 2020, as multiple production issues and delays forced Boeing to delay delivery of the Dreamliner. And finally, in Paris this week, 9 knuckleheads from the eco-terrorist group Greenpeace were arrested Friday for vandalizing an Air France Boeing 777 with green paint in a so-called airport eco-protest that alarmed airport officials as it raises serious questions about airport security in France. The authority that runs Paris's airports said the activists got inside Charles de Gaulle Airport by scaling a fence at the edge of the tarmac. Then, with the aid of an extendable paint roller, they painted one side of an Air France Boeing 777 green, of course. Then the hooligans climbed on top of the empty stored jet, where they remained for quite a while. Several of the activists refused to climb down from the plane despite orders from security personnel. ADP said the demonstrators were immediately intercepted and contained by police, preventing the terrorists from accessing the runways. Yes, I said terrorists. Greenpeace said this stunt was carried out to raise awareness on greenwashing, of climate change and environmental regulation, whatever that means. It also said it was organized ahead of a climate bill debate in the French Parliament. The National Airline Pilots Union was quick to denounce the stunt, saying that the intrusion into the airport's secure area and deliberate vandalizing of an aircraft will result in expensive repairs to the plane. Well, I for one think they should make those Greenpeace jackasses clean the aircrafts before they throw them in jail. And while they're in jail, since they love green paint so much, I hear that's a common prison color palette these days, let them paint their jail cells too. Well, there you have it, a quick look at some of the stories in the world of aviation news this week that caught my eye. Now it's your turn to let me know what you think. And if there's ever a story idea you'd like me to cover on the channel, please leave a comment. I'll do my best to make that happen. But before you go, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and ring that bell so you can be notified whenever we release new content. And as always, remember, leave the rubber on the runway and your troubles on the ground. And I will see you next time in the air. Yeah, this is Maximus.